Welcome to my garden studio. Today we're doing a portrait of little Kimberly on her Harley. So we're doing a portrait demonstration. Stick with me, enjoy the video. Bye. Welcome to my garden studio, and we're going to be doing a portrait of this cute little girl. And I'm going to show you step by step how we're painting a portrait of Kimberly. So I write her name on the top of the page or at the back. First thing I'd like to show you is preparation of the canvas. And the reason I do this is because I want to have texture, I want to have canvas texture, and I also want to have paint texture, so paint brushes. A paintbrush texture that happens in the background. It makes it easier when you actually end up painting. And when you paint on a smooth background, it's a lot more difficult. So I'm going to use white acrylic paint, and good quality acrylic paint, and a large brush. And what I'm going to do is dip it in, and I'm going to paint on and crisscross like this to get the texture, and then that would dry. Keep it as dry as you get it to as dry as you can. And then the next step is the transfer. So we have two images ready to size. I'm going to use the black and white image, and I've got the color reference. I also have a reference on my cell phone so I can see more detail, because sometimes you can't see the detail that's happening, and you have to actually zoom in and look at the detail, especially these areas which are similar tones to the background. Now I think what you should do is spend a lot of time looking at the picture, okay, and getting an idea of what you want to do. How much detail do I want in the background? I don't want much detail in the background. I want something soft, and it just stick by me and you'll see how we turn this background into a simpler background. I don't like this color, it's too much, it's taking away from her. But I really love this little Harley Davidson that she's got, and we're going to zoom in there to see some of the detail. Obviously the face and the eyes are probably the most important. So we got to really get those images in to our painting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to graphite the back of this black and white copy, and I'm not doing the whole thing, I'm just doing where I assume her to be. I'll be using some of these perspective lines that are happening in here, and I'm using this, and this is a waste copy, and then I'll use the color one as my reference material. Okay, so let's get started, see what happens. So we've seen we're using a black and white. I've set the color aside, protect it, set it aside. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn my board over. We're using canvas board, which is actually very good because it's cheaper to frame for the client. This is a commission. Someone asked me to paint this little girl. Her name's Kimberly, and she's riding her little Harley Davidson here. That's so cute. So what I'm going to do is use the back of the board and flip the painting, the reference over, and this is what I suggest you do when you're doing a portrait. I'm going to find out where she's sitting. This is a charcoal pencil, and I'm going to be affecting the whole back of this black and white photocopy. So I've got it down on its side like that, at an angle, and I'm getting as much cover as possible. I want all these little white gaps to be covered. And check where we're going, and we see, okay, we've covered every area. Got a little handlebar in there. I don't want the background, so I'm not worried about the background. So at this point you can actually turn the paper over and have a crisscross effect, so you're covering as much as you can. Get all these little white streaks out, And don't feel that you are cheating if you do this method. There are many ways of transferring this image, many ways, and I'm not too worried about the fact that we've got this. I'm looking at the little tire here and it's outside of my mark, so I'm going to turn it back and I'm going to get that in, make sure that's in, and there we go. At this point you're going to want to try and rub the charcoal in and get a more even amount of paint, charcoal cover. So that's what it looks like there. Now the most important thing is to try to position your painting, your reference, inside the canvas. So you'll see there's an equal amount at the top, down the sides, and then it's deeper at the bottom. And this board can be cut to any size. It can be cut down to there, it can be cut across here, but usually framers like to have a little bit of space down the bottom here, a little bit of weight. So your painting is actually sitting up on the canvas there. So now the important part is to try and hold this image down. You can tape it if you want to, but I don't really like doing that because it sometimes pulls the background off when you remove the tape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my tub of white acrylic in an open area, and then I'm going to try to get as much detail in here as possible with the pencil, and the pencil is sharp, okay, and you can actually use a pen as well to get that sharp edge. And what I'm going to demonstrate to you right now is a little piece of the image. So I'm pressing fairly hard, okay, getting the edge of her hair there. Hold the paper down and then see if we've got the image coming through. So I hope you can see that image coming through there, which is the line work that I want. So I'm going to actually use the pen because it's got a sharp point on the pen. Okay, so we're going to see, I'm going to put my tub back there so that the image doesn't go away. There we go. So I'm thinking of simple background, complicated image of her, because she's got cute little eyes and she's got cute little mouth, cute little toes, and she's so proud of her motorbike, and that's cool. Then I'm going to bring some of these perspective lines in as we come forward. It's more focused down here, less focused here. Okay, we're on again, and just wanted to point out that this is not actually that easy as many of the videos that you may have watched of mine before were easy, and we're not going to call it something that's easy, but what you want to do is try and get every little detail in and constantly referring to your color reference. So there's a little shadow, wherever the shadows sit, you want to try and get it in. The most important part of any portrait is going to be the eye, or the eyes, that you want to make sure that you get them perfectly accurate, because that's the personality of the painting. So what I'm doing is I'm getting all these little details in, pressing quite hard so that I'll get everything in, and I'm going to use that as we go along. You want to try and get exactly right on the line, in the middle of the line. Some areas you might not know what it is. Could be a piece of fabric, or could be a piece of leaf or foliage, or little gaps between the toes like this. This has got to be very delicately done. And that's really the focus point, right at that point there, the eyes. So I'm going to leave it till last. Some artists and some of my students like to think that they say they want to paint the eyes last, and some of them say they want to paint the eyes first. In my opinion, painting the eyes last, it's a kind of strange thing that happens. When you paint the eyes first, you almost think that the painting's finished, and you don't spend as much time with each part of the reference. So let's just say, for example, we've got an area like this little crease that happens in under her armpit here. We tend to think, okay, don't worry about that little area there, worry about this area. So what I like to do is get this secure, and then the eyes become the final touches on the painting, and that's the character. This little mouth that's happening down here, tiny little nose, little toes, little fingers up here, that's what I want. The bike can be anything. It can have tread on it, and can have a big, whatever you want, but you've got to get this completely right. And another thing that's to be said is I'm pinning it down with a weight, so this doesn't move. We're working in a garden, and my garden studio, and you can hear the birds in the background, okay, and interrupting noises, which not so bad, but what I'm thinking is the wind is picking up, and you don't want this piece of reference to lift off. This gives you a little bit of an idea of what I'm seeing so far. Okay, that gives you a bit of an idea there. Be quite careful with your trace. The most difficult part of it is right now. Actually coloring this in is not a difficult thing at all. It's actually very, very easy choosing the color. But making sure the features are right and that's recognizable for mommy and daddy and friends. They recognize this is Kimberly, and that looks just like Kimberly, you know. That's what your painting wants to look like. Yeah, so we'll see you in the next segment. So sometimes when you're putting these lines in, the soft areas like this area here, you don't worry about that. You're going to watch your reference, so you're going to go for your color reference, which is there. So you're going to see, okay, dark and light. Okay, but what is important is to try and get all the lines in. So what I do is I lift the paper and I just flick it backwards and forwards like this to get an idea that I've got all those lines in. There's a line that's missing here, which gives me the shape of the bike. So I'm going to flick it backwards and forwards, get all her toes in. There's a line missing here, so it tells me I must put that line in. It's going to come in importantly right at the end once we start coloring and putting in. These marks that happen on her dress over here, that's not so important. I can do that by eye. We can do that by eye, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do these perspective lines and get them in, and ignore the chair and all the stuff in the background. So far so good. So you might be able to see how much has been done here, and I don't want to lift the canvas up to show you detail. I'll show you later, but I've tried to get everything in, and I flick it up and down to just make sure that all the lines are in, the important lines. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get an indication of this paving that happens here, and it's really, really light. When I get to painting it, it's going to be with glaze coat or something to make it thin, and it's just an indication of the perspective where it gives her a ground, something to sit on. We'll ride her bike on, that's what we want, to ride the bike. So I've got random lines, but I'm following the pattern and following the structure of these paving lines that happen. So there's a really big one, and there's a big one. So you don't have to copy everything, you don't have to trace every issue that you see, as long as you remember what is needed. There's a very strange mark there that I don't want to overemphasize because it's right on her foot, and I don't want her foot to disappear when the painting happens. So that's the paving lines. I just keep following it as we go. So now at this point we've done the paving lines, and I realize that there's no charcoal in the corners, which is actually quite nice because it means that the paving lines are going to be a little bit faded out as we go. And she's got the beautiful this ground that she's sitting on, this ground, it's paving stuff, and I'm going to take my weight off. I'm quite happy that all the lines are in. I'm going to just set that aside, and then we're just going to give you a bit of a view of it as closely as possible. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at. Here's the face, and there's the dress and the fabric. So here is the paving at the bottom, and it's kind of faded out, which is actually perfect. So what I want to do now is take a break, and then we'll start thinking about the color and how to tone this little picture. But you can see there's a lot of open space on the outside, and it's probably going to make quite a nice portrait. Eh? We never know. See how it goes. Okay. So what we have is I've mixed up some raw sienna and water, and I'm going to start to tone the drawing. So you might be able to see the drawing from there. It's really the closest I can get at this stage to the color of the skin, and I'm going to tone the entire drawing and give it a tonal value, and you'll see that the texture of the painting will start to show through, and that's really what I want. I'm going to go over the whole drawing, going right outside the border, and you may notice how the painting's at a slight angle, and what I'm doing is I'm going right outside the border. Here it's still raw canvas. This is being painted with white acrylic, and it's pretty hot today, so it's going to dry very quickly. I'm putting the paint brush aside, and I'm going to take some pure color, the pure color of her skin, and at this point just try and darken her skin. And I'm not worried about the lines. I'm going right through the lines because I want to have the white come back when we put the white in, the highlights of her skin, and what will happen is it will stand out on top of her skin. So this is really, it's going nicely so far. A portrait with this complexity, with a little motorbike and a Harley Davidson bike, it's not actually that easy. So you've got to take it step by step, and my advice is to start lightly and build up to the dark and then come back to the light. So we're building up to the dark and then putting the light back on top. So what I've done here is I've mixed up some of my raw sienna with white, and I'm going to make sure that the face is becoming more solid, because there are marks underneath from the canvas, which I don't want to be in the face, because you want the face to be smooth, and at this point you don't want texture. You don't want texture in the paint, so it's going to be more solid, and I'm waiting for the white to come in later. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting the skin tone correct, and it's a small brush, using a small pointy brush, getting the ear in, getting the eyelid in, and now at this stage she looks pretty scary, but it's going to change. Looks like an alien, but it is going to change. You just have to wait and see how it changes. It's a weird thing. So that's getting nice, I'm happy with it. Bit of water in my paint. Let's get this arm in. And essentially what we're doing is making a mid-tone. We're giving a mid-tone of her skin color. So the light can stand on the skin color and the dark shadows can stand on the skin color. Try not to go over the lines at this point. We want to keep those lines so we don't forget where we are. And there we go, going into the shadows. Let's get her leg in. Get her leg in on this side. With her foot on this side and her leg on the other side. And remember the bike, her Harley Davidson bike is black, dark color, dark black. We won't be using black. As you know, I'm not an advocate of black. I don't like the color black. It's too dark. So I'll show you how we're going to do that. We're going to actually cross the color wheel with blue and purple and make the bike dark and black. Now that skin tone is actually working quite nicely. I'm quite happy with it. Right now we could add white in here, which won't show too much now, but it's going to show later as it dries. The highlight on the top of her head. Yeah. So that's it, and then a little bit of white in there. And as I say, try not to make it too textural. The paint itself mustn't be textural. So you're getting rid of all these little texture marks. And there's a bit of white on this side. I'm following the reference very carefully. If things go a little bit more, a little textural, you just wipe it off with your brush, and you can use your finger as well. Use your finger and get it down to the white. You don't want it to be too pastelized because it is skin color, it's living, and so yeah, you just take it as it comes and blend it in. This paint is drying extremely quickly, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It's like you want it to dry quickly, but then you've got to move quite quickly. You've got to paint very fast. There's too much white in there, wipe it off. Too much white in there, wipe it off. And get her highlights on her fingers here. And as I say, we're going to get to a point where we are putting in the shadow marks. So far so good. I'm happy with that. We could actually carry on and get some darker tone in here, and it's really a tester to see if the tone is working, if the tone is correct, and that seems to be right. So that's almost pure raw sienna under her little chin. Painting children is a little bit tricky because their skin is so smooth. Their skin is very smooth, and you've got to watch that you don't have anything that looks like a wrinkle. So I'm going to be putting that tone in there. And you will see it goes from light to dark to light to dark. And you try and just follow your reference. Yeah, I'm looking at my reference all the time. My reference might be out of the picture, but it's here on the right hand side. So I'm following that reference all the time. And darken here. And it's going to become darker than this. This is just a start to give me a feel of it. Okay, and it's looking okay. I'm happy. Got a little bit of a cheek here, so we put the cheek in. And her face is starting to come quite nicely. There's a little bit of a mark down there that runs and gets the shape of the face. Her eyes are going to be really dark, so I'm not worried about that at this point in time. Right now I just want to get that tonal value in with the raw sienna. That's what I'm doing right now, and getting rid of the pencil shading, pencil marks. Okay, so we're getting there. can't see your hand, so we've got to move this out of the way and put a bit of shade tone in there. Yep, and that's good. What I thought we'd do is we're going to colour the dress in, and the dress is a pink. You can call it pink, but it's actually alizarin with white. So it's going to warm up that whole area. Still can be very, very gentle and soft. Doesn't have to be thick paint, but you're watching all the time, watching what the color is doing all the time. I'm going to get in here and make it alizarin and white, which is a pink color. Eh? It's like kind of cute little girl's dress. And what I want to point out is that it's warming up. The color is warming up. So I'm going to put a darker area there, which is almost pure alizarin. Picking up the alizarin. Dark area in here. And you can see how the pencil has been very effective. To do the pencil work is more important than the color. Color is actually easy. Putting the color on is easy. And try and follow the flow of the dress. Don't paint across the flow of the dress. So we got this coming in. Still using a small brush, a tiny brush. I think it's size 3. No, it's size 4. So that's what you do. You just keep going, keep going, keep going. Added a bit of white to bring the highlight in on the dress. And what you also remember is you're using thin down paint. It's not heavy paint yet. The heavy paint's coming later. So I'm watering my paint down quite a lot. Get it to be see-through. There's a bit of fur in here, so I'm going to try and get that off. I don't like fur or hair in the painting at all. It's just not so good. And I'm following the side, the shape of the dress. So that's warmed the dress up. It's warmed this whole area up. And putting it a little bit. This part of what I'm painting now is dry. Dries very, very quickly. And we put some shape in. So now I'm going to just get some white and put the white in. And that's the highlight on the dress. So keep looking at your reference all the time. Don't stop looking at your reference. And there we go. Some highlights in there. And highlights on the pleating, pleating. I don't know what it's called. Pleating. Someone will know. Pleating or pleating, what is it? What could it be? Pleating. And there's quite a dark patch underneath the arm here, which is actually nice because it will highlight the arm itself. The arm, when it becomes light, it'll make the arm light. And there's a shadow of her arm on the dress as well. And a couple of double layers for the shadows and the little curves inside the dress. And there's another one. Okay, some areas aren't dry yet. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the highlighted areas of the dress itself. So very light crimson with white. And we're going to highlight the parts of the dress. Looking at the reference all the time. All the time. Go back to the reference. Don't feel that you've got the picture in your mind. You got to follow that picture. You will follow that picture. There's a highlight over here, and it goes right through there. There's a highlight sitting underneath there. Waiting for the paint to dry, which is literally minutes. It dries in minutes. It's thin, so it dries very, very quickly. And there we go for the dress so far. Try and make sure that the whole dress is in, because to find this color again is going to be difficult. A little bit tricky to find the color again. So try and get the whole, the panel of the dress, this alizarin crimson. Okay, and that's the base for the dress at the moment. I'm going to come back and put some dark areas in there. Here I've got two brushes. One is a broad small brush, that's size 6, and this is size 4. And I've mixed up a purple color. In fact, it almost looks black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the bike. So we have to watch that we are following the edge of the bike. I want this to be one solid dark color, and you'll see how it's going to actually edge the whole painting to darken this bike. The little Harley Davidson, cute, very very cute. So there we go. Try and follow the shape of the bike as well with the paint strokes. We're not just painting a solid area. We're going to darken this further. It's going to get a bit darker than it is now. I'm building up, and that's the secret, is to build up slowly from light to dark. Yeah, that's the secret. It's just this purple color giving me a dark tone against her skin and against her dress. So keep an eye on the reference, don't lose sight of the reference. And as you know, if you've watched my previous videos, I don't like hair in my paintings, and it sometimes is very irritating because I've got to get it out. So I've got to lift that hair out with the brush, and now it's disappeared. So I don't know where it's gone, but anyway, it's gone. That's all I know, it's gone, and that's, I don't want the hair in the brush, in the painting. So here we go, we've got an undercoat of dark plastic scooter bike. Well, it's actually Harley Davidson. And now it's drying on the opposite end, and I'm going to take the chance to put that in the paint, in the water, and I'm going to take a chance to make this really dark. What I'm doing is mixing blue and red, alizarin crimson, because I don't like the idea of black. I like the idea of mixing your darks. So we might get to the point where we're painting with black in this painting, but not yet. We're going to get to that point now. And there's my bike. There's a piece that was missing. Okay, get that in, these little parts here, and that little part there, like really black, and underneath her hand. So there's a shadow area under her hand, and then there's shadow areas underneath her other arm as well, and along the top of the bike. So what we're doing now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to lift the painting up to show you the detail, and then we're going to come back to the bike, let it dry a bit, and come back to the bike. So this is what the painting looks like at this point in time. So it's really just very pastel-y and soft colour, not too heavy. So the next stage of the painting, especially on the bike side, I want to put some black in my paint palette, and it's a little bit heavy, but that's okay. And looking at the shape of the bike, I want to paint the bike in like really darkly, get it in darkly. And the highlights are going to come back again. We're going to put the highlights in at the end. I think this paintbrush is a bit heavy, so we're going to go to a smaller paintbrush, and I'm going to paint into, I'm looking at the reference, keep your eye on the reference all the time. And there's a panel there. You know, what happens is the bike has actually got a structure to it, so you want to try and keep that structure. It's not just a solid black, there's more to it than that. So keeping the tone and the shape of the bike. I want it's already reading as a bike, there's no doubt about that, but I want to keep the shape of the tires and the wheels and the spokes that are happening here, and around all the curves, and looking at the shape all the time, getting these little bumps. And of course, once again, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. It's just a shape. It's an idea of a bike. I'm not actually painting a bike here. I'm doing a picture of a bike. I'm not painting a bike. So I'll get this sharp edge in there, which is really cool, and come all the way around on the side of her petrol tank or fuel tank or whatever, coming in the small areas. Keep an eye on everything. Everything. There's a tank cover, and then there's a little shape inside there, and then the paint, like, it gets really dark underneath her dress and underneath her leg, so that's pretty dark. So we're going to darken that. And there's these little white spots that you might see. These little white spots on the bike. We're going to do that later. I'm planning the painting for it. There's a little triangle underneath here, needs to be put in as a dark area. And there's the underneath of the rim of her wheel. It's really dark here. So try and get that in. I can still see my pencil line, so that helps a lot. And up right underneath her dress, get a sharp edge there. And I see, that's interesting. I went and I covered this little triangle here, which is not so cool. I'll have to remember that. When I paint the paving, I'm going to have to paint that the same color. So let's get some dark in here. The nice part about having the undercoat is you don't have to be too careful with the final coat, because the undercoat actually helps you to see what's happening. And there's the piece that comes under there on her bike. And then I think that's enough for now. I'm going to come back to it and then see what happens the next round, the next segment. But at this point in time, it's starting to read as a bike. These little spokes that come in here. And then right underneath, I see there's a shadow there underneath the wheel. Right at the bottom of the wheel, like that. And there's a piece that comes in there. It's slowly building up. So we're putting the paint brushes in the water, and we'll see you in the next segment. And now we've got the base in, and I'm happy. I'm going to just affect the background and then put highlights throughout the painting. Well, here we are again, and what I've been doing is putting some highlights in my portrait of Kimberly. So you can see the highlights have come up, especially on her lips and her nose. Highlights in the eyes and highlights on the fabric. Also her Harley Davidson's been highlighted and given that shiny effect of plastic. Yeah, so that's as far as we are going. Now we're going to do the little detail in the dress, in her dress, and then I'm going to affect the background somehow, although I might just leave the background like it is. And then we're going to border it. I'm going to get a border in there, and then we should be finished. Yep, I'm very happy so far. So far so good. Her favorite color is actually pink, kind of purpley pink, so I'm going to border it in purpley pink. What I'm doing now, I'm going to just give it a bit of shadow and I don't like using black, but I'm going to soften the black with the brown color. I'm going to give it a shadow under there, and then I'm going to green this area. Green this area and shadow under her other foot, and then I'll shadow under the wheel. And what it does is it grounds the painting, puts it on the ground. And then I'm going to give this a little bit of definition. Pardon me, coughing, something in my throat, little frog in my throat. The definition on the side, on the sides of this tiling that's happening. And the painting is almost finished. I'm going to now edge it around the border. So the border is going to be edged. And we just need to get this reference. So what I'm doing is I'm using this reference, and I'm seeing that this is slightly darker. So I'm going to just give it a bit of... This is where perspective comes in, and it's a bit of a tough thing to get right. But yeah, we seem to be fine. And that gives it a little bit of a shadow. I don't think there's much more that I can do on the painting except for edging it. So stick with me and you see what the final painting looks like. Okay, what we're doing is I'm going to edge the painting with the purple. So as usual, I'm using the very basic colors, and I'm going to mix up a purple, and I need a fair amount because I'm going to give it a border. So we've got blue and red, and it doesn't really matter how it turns out. I just want it to be fairly dark. And what I'm edging it with is a piece of laminated paper. So I've got a nice corner on here like that, and I'm going to mix it up with a really big brush like that, and not any water, no water. So I'm getting a really dark color. I'm going to see what that color turns out to be. Let's just make it a little bluer because it's a bit brown at the moment. So I'm taking blue and I'm adding it to the mixture like that. Mix, mix, mix. And of course you have to work quickly because it's a little bit warm and the paint dries quite quickly. Turn my brush over. I love these palettes actually. The flat palette is also good. You can work with a flat palette. This red pigment's very strong, so I'm not sure. We just have to see. It's coming along. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush it away from the plastic. I'm not brushing it into the plastic. So I'm going to edge it like that. And take it right to the edge. Yeah, take it right to the edge. And then you get an idea. Not quite the color I wanted. This is a bit burgundy or brown, but let's just see. You can always paint over it, but you can see I'm brushing it away from the plastic, and it's very easy to edge it. When you lift the plastic up, you'd have to be very careful that you don't smudge it. So I'm now turning it around, I'm putting it back on, lining up my corners. Watch that you don't touch the plastic down there. And I'm pressing pretty hard onto the canvas so that it stays on, doesn't shift. And looking okay, pick up some more paint. Pick up some more paint, and then we edge it down to that side and all the way to this edge. Don't worry about the table. Your studio table is meant to be dirty. And what this does is gives it a lovely fuzzy kind of feel. I'll pick it up again, and I'm going to wait for that to dry. This area needs to be done and this area needs to be done, and then So I'll wait for this to dry before I put the next piece of plastic, which is ready here. So we'll see you in a minute. So we're at the end. This is the painting. So I've edged it, and it's not sharp edge, it's just giving a little fuzzy edge around the whole painting. And that's what I think is, I think it's quite a nice color, although I did want it to be bluer. But that gives you an idea of what the finished portrait looks like of Kimberly and her Harley. Yeah, thanks for watching.